Yes, ma'am. Women in our military, as I have said publicly, have and continue to make amazing contributions across all aspects of our battlefield.
Well, you also write in your book, The War on Warriors, with the chapter, The Deadly Obsession with Women Warriors, that, quote, not only are women comparatively less effective than men in combat roles, but they are more likely to be objectified by the enemy and their own nation in the moral realms of war. Mr. Hegseth, should we take it to believe that you believe that the two women on this committee who have served honorably and with distinction made our military less effective and less capable?
Senator, I would like to clarify, when I'm talking about that issue, it's not about the capabilities of men and women, it's about standards. And this committee has talked a lot about standards. Standards that we, unfortunately, over time, have seen eroded in certain duty positions, certain schools, certain places, which affects readiness, which is what I care about the most, readiness on the battlefield. I appreciate that. And so my comments point time and time again to standards.
There are a lot of questions when it comes to Secretary of Defense, and I noticed that there weren't a lot of questions about the use of our military. Now, certainly those political questions and that strategy goes through the president, and that's his direction. But, you know, for a nominee who's going to be in charge of the war fighters, we really didn't get a lot of questions about the use of our military. A lot of questions about foreign policy, certainly hardly any questions about Afghanistan, hardly any questions about Ukraine. In fact, it was Pete Hegseth himself that tended to bring that up much more than certainly any of the Democrat senators.
Well, what I would really like to know is what this administration's approach is going to be in terms of defense spending. Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex. I think one of the facts that came out during the Ukraine war, Russia can build about 4.5 million or produce 4.5 million of these 155 millimeter shells at about $600 a pop. The West in total can only produce about 2 million. In the U.S., it costs 6,000. In Europe, it's about 8,000 euros. So again, we are getting hosed by the military-industrial complex. I would really like to see Elon Musk devote a lot of his effort in terms of bringing efficiency to our procurement process and making sure that what we are purchasing, A, we get at a good cost, so we're not getting hosed. But secondly, just completely rethink what it is we're buying. We buy these platforms that can be taken out with an asymmetric drone or now hypersonic missile. Are we factoring that in? Are we taking a look at the way the war is really being waged in Ukraine with drones that render our Abrams tanks somewhat useless? So again, we need a complete rethinking. I'm hoping he employs people like Eric Prince, who wrote an excellent piece. Are we too big to win? Recommend everybody read that piece. Really puts this into focus. But how we spend the money is probably more important than how much we actually spend.
Senator, I couldn't agree more. I was just I was asked about this question a couple of days ago in an interview, and I heard some comments about, oh well, we need to help Ukraine win on the battlefield, and we just need to send them more money and send them more weapons. And I kind of turned around and said, where are they coming from? Because we've already had our admirals in the Pacific telling us that our fleet is starting to run low on munitions, particularly anti-aircraft missiles and these SM-2s that are used that are, by the way, have been used to quite effect in the Red Sea against the Houthis. We're already hearing talk from our units in garrison here in the United States regarding artillery shells and the fact that those keep being sent over to Ukraine. So I guess my question is, where is all this coming from? Because we don't even have, in some cases, the manufacturing capacity, let alone the the retention in our own stockpiles to go into this stuff. So it's either you're going to talk more spending, you're going to talk manufacturing, potentially procurement from overseas. I'm not even really sure. That's going to be a huge question, and certainly something that I think that when we talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, we can also talk about what should our priorities be when it comes to spending. And certainly we know who's benefiting quite greatly from these wars, and it tends to be the people that are being paid to fight them.
Well, first of all, one thing Washington, D.C. is not particularly good at is recognizing reality. And the first awful reality, I don't like it, is Vladimir Putin will not lose this war. He won't lose it. Again, they can outproduce us in terms of 155 millimeter shells. They have almost an endless supply of young men that they're willing to send as cannon fodder. So he's not going to lose this war. So accept that reality, end it. Also accept the reality that we can't resupply it. We can't restock it. I think one of the most depraved explanations for sending another $100 billion to Ukraine was, given inside the Beltway here, saying that, oh, this money is really not going to Ukraine. It's going to create jobs in your state. Listen, I'm all for jobs in America here, but at the expense of the young lives in Russia and Ukraine. Again, I take no joy that Russian conscripts are dying in that, just meat grinder of a stalemate. So again, you have to face those realities, and again, we have to ask ourselves some real hard questions. How much money are we, fueling into the military-industrial complex? To what extent are we not getting our money's worth? I'd say we're not getting our money's worth at all, and we've got to really rethink what it is we really need to procure.
No, I think that's exactly right. And, when it comes down to it, we're really seeing this from a lot of President Trump's transformational nominees. So you hear that from Pete Hegseth. He's a combat veteran. Obviously, President Trump chose J.D. Vance, another global war on terror veteran, to be his vice president. He was resoundingly elected, and I think a lot of people later came on board saying that J.D. Vance was a fantastic pick for vice president. And of course, he drew upon those experiences, and in not only that, but also the lies that were told to sell that war that he thought that he was signing up for, that he was going to be going over and serving the country and serving his nation, and he was happy to do so and proud to do so. And certainly Pete Hegseth said that again and again when he was on on the stand in his hearing today. And it's something that we've got a couple of minutes before the break, but Tulsi Gabbard as well, who's going to be coming up. This is a position where, look, she's not with Republicans on every issue across the board. When it comes to these issues of national security, she draws on her own experience as a combat veteran.
Bobby Kennedy keeps reminding us that his uncle, JFK, said that the number one priority, that the top job responsibility of the President of the United States was to keep America out of wars. And from my standpoint, you get war fighters in these positions, they understand that war is hell. They're going to want to try and keep America out of wars. And I think of any president that during my lifetime, I think Donald Trump is probably the person, the least likely to engage us in war. And the prime example is when I ran down the drone and the war drums were beating and everybody, you've got to retaliate. At the very end, President Trump finally asked the relevant question. First of all, how much did that drone cost? A couple $1 million. How many people are going to die retaliating? A couple hundred. And he made the correct decision saying, I don't think a couple $1 million drone is worth the loss of that kind of life. And he stood down. It wasn't popular for him to stand down, but that's exactly what we expect in terms of a leader. So, President Trump does not want to fight wars. He wants to achieve peace through strength. And that starts with economic strength. That starts with a unified nation, with people who are high in spirits again, looking to build America up as opposed to just, ride out the decline of America, which is what we were doing over the last 4 years.